Food for thought. We are back just about 3:30 Eastern time here. NFL, another wild week. MLB baseball in full swing. NHL had opening night over the weekend. We got NBA preseason. College football was chaotic Saturday. Pretty soon college hoops are in effect. I mean, if you're a sports fan, this is a hell of a time to be alive. I'm joined by Will Priester. What's going on, my good friend?
What's going on, everybody? What's going on, Luch? What's going on, listeners? What's going on, RotoGrinders fam? It's FFT Food for Thought coming in hot on a Monday. Look, 30 minutes later than usual, but hopefully everybody's still in. Yeezy's in the chat. I'm going to try to be monitoring the chat better today. Yeezy, what's going on? Always in the building. So glad that you guys could stop by and hang out with us and talk some NFL. This isn't your mama's podcast. It's not your mama's preview show. We'll talk food. We'll talk family. It'll be fun. We'll talk about the previous slate, and it's a very enjoyable experience for me to come on and hang out with Luch every week, and hopefully we give you guys some nuggets that can help you along the way.
For sure. Consider this your weekly reset button. There's some stats and things that are readily available on Monday, but not a ton. And I mean, hell, the week's not even over yet. We got Monday Night Football. So this is a pretty raw reaction show. And then we'll give you our first look ahead. It's going to be the first time that we're opening up the DK pricing and looking at some of these lines and things like that. And, maybe we're like a day or two too short on the show because you get the prop lines coming out like Tuesday night if you're lucky, Wednesday. Sometimes FanDuel likes to drag their feet a little later than most books, but jumping on those lines early is the way to go. I mean, they kind of move like penny stocks in the grand scheme of things. If you wait until Sunday, you missed out on maybe 6-7 yards of value or something like that, which is just a monster difference in the prop world. Scoresandodds.com. We always have a ton of stuff up on there early. Check it out. You won't be upset. What am I trying to say here? I got a notification. It's Monday. My brain is
maybe
disappointed. That's why I got you. I appreciate that. I was in New York over the weekend, so kind of still in recoup mode here, but we'll get to that in story time. It was a blast here. And boy, was I thinking of producer Steve yesterday in that Mets-Phillies game here. I'm sure he'll chime in later if he'd like, but wow, what the playoff baseball has been insane, Chief. And I know it's maybe a sad time for you because the Braves aren't in it, but just, as a fan of the game, it's been bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been exciting, and not to push past baseball. I'm not trying to get off baseball. I'm parlaying this into playoff baseball and the NFL regular season and the college regular season so far. To me, this has been one of the most interesting postseasons and beginning of the seasons for all of these sports. I know this is an NFL show, but guys, we're sports fans at heart. So just indulge me here for a second. In the NFL, I know there aren't like rankings, Luch, right? Like rankings like college football, but I believe we saw tons of upsets this past weekend in the NFL. And really, I feel like we've been seeing that every week. Like every week, some team loses that they shouldn't lose. In college, we saw some massive upsets. I mean, Alabama goes down. A couple other teams go down that we didn't anticipate. Georgia kind of got out of the gate slow again. So that's college football, and then playoff baseball has just been wild. And I mean, even that Dodgers game, right? It's just been some interesting things happening just over the landscape of sports right now, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I know this, once again, this is an NFL show, and trust me, we're going to talk about NFL and all the drama that is the NFL. But I mean, there's been so many interesting happenings across the landscape of sports in general.
Let's get through these reads real quick, and then we'll jump into the NFL talk. RotoGrinders Combo Lite. Our newest product gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price of other tools. Competitors charge hundreds a month for their sim products. Combo Lite right here at RG is just $39.99. It includes our Sim Labs lineup building tool and content from some of your favorite DFS analysts. Combo Lite doesn't limit you to one sport either. It includes Sim Labs access to the 4 most popular sports, meaning Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, and PGA. Check it out. Combo light at RG, just $39.99. Big shout out to Super DG for taking down the Week 5 Listener League here at RG. Kudos to Super DG. We'll talk about who was cooking momentarily, and it sounds like you hit the right buttons this week, my friend. So congratulations. Hit up anyone here at RG for your month of RG Combo Premium. You can hit up me, Chief, Producer Steve, anyone here, and we'll put you in touch with the right people. So congratulations. Don't forget to join in the fun each week. RG Listener League, play alongside other viewers and your favorite host, and you'll have a chance every week to compete for first place and possibly win yourself a month of RG Combo Premium if you take down the Listener League. Check our description here for an invite to the contest when it goes live every Wednesday. And last but not least, available in 34 states, it's Splash Sports. They lead the way in peer-to-peer fantasy and betting contests. Join the action and take on the RG experts at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. Use promo code ROTO10 to redeem $10 in credits after you've entered your first contest. Splash Sports, really cool angle on the peer-to-peer gaming landscape, which is, I think, about to take off in terms of survivor contests and pick'ems and things like that. So check out Splash Sports. And without further ado, while I catch my breath, Chief Justice 06, who was cooking on Sunday in the NFL?
I mean, man, to be quite honest with you, there were several teams that were cooking, but look, I'm going to go to a team that I feel like is continuing to win football games that we didn't expect first, Luch. And to me, something's happening in Washington here, right? Like, don't we have to acknowledge the fact that the Washington Commanders are continuing to win football games? Now, it's week 5, but I think from a fan perspective and I don't want to say from DFS perspective, Luce, but I think from an NFL analyst perspective, not us, I'm saying the general NFL analysts that are on ESPN, NFL Network, CBS Sports, Fox Sports, you name it. I feel like Jaden McDaniels after week 3, Jaden Daniels after week 3 they were like, 82% completions. Like, let's not overblow this thing. This probably won't continue. Like, hey, they'll run up against some tough top competition, and I do believe that. However, I don't think we can continue to ignore. It's week 5, but Luch, we're third through the season now. Like, we're third through the season. The Washington Commanders are continuing to win football games, and they are continuing to win convincingly. So they're not, and look, they've had some close ones, don't get me wrong. But I mean, they won 34-13 versus Cleveland here. Like that, I think that was a good win, Luch. The week before, 42-14 versus the Cardinals. The week before that, 38-33 against the Bengals, who also pushed what people may arguably think is the best team in football, the Ravens. They pushed the Ravens to the brink yesterday. Now, obviously, they beat the Giants 21-18. An extreme, just an extremely different type of game. And then, of course, they lost to the Buccaneers at the opening in Tampa Bay, 37-20. But since that loss, they've rattled off 4 wins. And the Giants beat the Seahawks yesterday. The Bengals pushed the Ravens. The Cardinals beat the 49ers, and then they convincingly beat the Browns. So, I mean, in all the parity that is the NFL, I think the Washington Commanders are cooking with hot grease here, and no one wants to believe that it's real. Everybody thinks it's an air fryer, but I think the grease is actually hot here, Luch. I think the Commanders have something going on in Washington that could be replicable throughout the season as long as the injury bug doesn't hit them too hard.
Yeah, and this was a fun, a little bit more of a telling week for me. I said last week, love what they're doing. Let me see them against the Browns. And, that defense might be a step up from what the previous competition was. On the flip side, man, Deshaun Watson is just brutal. It's brutal.
Deshaun Watson is what's cooked. And I mean in the worst way.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. From a 5,000-foot view, it wasn't that long ago he was playing at an MVP level. And I mean, it's brutal. And if you're an Amari Cooper I know we're talking about, who's cooking. Maybe I'm jumping the gun, but if you were an Amari Cooper backer or investor in any shape or way or form, pretty much the whole year, and he's rightfully getting frustrated. Yesterday was rough. And, he only had 50% of catchable targets. The week before, an 80-yard touchdown get called back. I mean,
is he at home on his knees praying to God Almighty? If you believe in God, I'm not trying to force my religion on anybody, so I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. But like, for the all intents and purposes of what I'm trying to demonstrate here, is he at home like praying that the Chiefs pick up the phone and get him out of Cleveland, right? Like, isn't he like, hey, please get me out of here? Oh man, if I'm Amari Cooper, I am like, I'm locking myself in my house and I'm not coming out until a deal is made.
Just massive kudos to Jaden Daniels. Again, they're taking care of these teams. Even if they're not good, they are taking care of them convincingly. They're not winning by a field goal. And, after looking at, we have 5 weeks under our belts, which in the grand scheme is so tough. We talk about this frequently. What's 5 games, right? In the grand scheme of things. But they've been convincing. He has 8 total touchdowns and just 2 picks. Of course, only 4 through the air. But the damage he's been able to do, just his threat as a runner, over 5 yards a carry, and his maybe he's a little bit too quick to bail, but he is such a threat on the ground, and like his pocket presence for all things considered is pretty impressive, and he just has such raw talent and ability, and he's pretty poised. It's fun to watch. Like he is must watch football, I think, right now. So I saw what I needed to see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Luch.
No, all I'm saying is I saw what I needed to see. Last week I said, let me see him do it against the Browns. And now, all effing steam ahead, man. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, here's the thing. And this is one of the things I know we've talked about before, like just in general and on this show and previously. 5 games in the NFL is like 25 games in the NBA. It's a third of the season. And I know the NBA is an 82 game season, but I'm saying around 25 games is about a third of the way there. I know the NFL is 17 games, 18 games now. I think we're up 17 games. That's about a third of the way there. Maybe we need one more week, Luch, if we want to call it almost a true third of the way. But the closer we get to the middle of the season, the more, the wheat's going to separate from the tear. The more the real teams are going to start to stand out. And yeah, you have teams like the Bengals who over the past couple seasons have been able to lose 3 or 4 games early, be 1-3, 2-4, and still get into the playoffs. But you get behind the 8 ball a third of the way there in the NFL, and other teams keep winning and you can't make up that ground. It's very hard to see yourself in the playoff picture. Inversely, when teams like the Commanders lose, they're 4-1. They're not 2-3, 3-2. This is a 4-1 football team leading their division currently. And as they start to get into, some of these division games, Luch, as they continue to win those, if they start to win those, what are people going to say? Now they've got and I know we're not in the look ahead, they've got a tall task this week. Almost an in-state rivalry, if you will, with the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. So this is going to be a true test. If they come out of this thing beating the Ravens this week, I think you're going to start hearing Jaden Daniels for MVP, let alone, offensive rookie of the year. If they beat the Ravens and he has another efficient, really good-looking showing, like, this is going to be, people are going to be treating this like CJ Stroud from last year. He's going to be in the MVP conversation.
I mean, the guy is completing almost 80% of his passes so far. It doesn't matter who those 5 opponents are. As a first-year player, completing almost 4/5 of your pass attempts, only throwing 2 picks in the first 5 weeks is remarkable. And you're right. This is a huge gauge. This is going to be a huge where are we at here with the Commanders week for sure. And I didn't even look at that line yet, but I'm curious to check that game out as a whole.
One more question about that, and then we can move on to some other games. Now, like I said, I know we're not in look ahead, but I feel like parlaying that get it? This is a sports show. Parlaying that into the Commanders as a football team outside of Jaden Daniels. if they don't beat Baltimore, if they don't win the game, but let's say they lose in a last-second field goal, how does that skew your view of the Commanders? For me, it's going to tell me everything. Like, it's not going to change my thoughts at all, but obviously it's still going to be an L it's going to be a loss in the L column. But if this game is tight and it comes down to some last-second heroics, then do you still feel like they've arrived, or do you think, maybe this is about to start come crashing down here? What are your thoughts?
No, if it's a close game, I still think there's a positive outlook for this year. That's not gonna, change my mind. If they absolutely get demolished, then I'll say, okay, they're fun this year. But even if they get crushed, I mean, we talked a little bit about this last week. Got another win against the Browns under your belt. There's still a ton of problems in the NFC East. Big win for the Giants, by the way. You know what I mean? Big win. Doesn't really push the needle for me with their overall outlook. The Eagles, how healthy are they going to be post-bye week? The Cowboys, they have a ton of problems themselves. I mean, huge win last night in Pittsburgh. Again, like, hard to gauge these teams and who they are. And we'll talk some Steelers then and some Cowboys, but our good friend Eric Beimfor was kind of, raising his eyebrows with some concerns about the Cowboys all summer and his best ball content. And, outside of CeeDee Lamb, it's kind of a brutal offense. I mean, little sad on my part too. I had two Jalen Tolbert captain teams in the power sweep last night, and I couldn't get there. 4% captain. So really close, but you just got to be so perfect in DFS, whether you're playing Manslater or Showdown, and couldn't get there. But no, a close loss is still as positive as a loss could be, hypothetically for the Commanders this week. But on the same token, Chief, if you're Cincinnati, it's got to be the most demoralizing 1-4 start. Okay, week 1, Jamar's rusty, T's hurt, doesn't play. You lose to the Patriots. It's we throw week 1 out sometimes. Still a stinker. Still a total stinker. Then you go into Arrowhead, play your behinds off, lose by 1. Controversial home field Mahomes calls in that game, whatever you want to say. Then you lose to the Jaden Daniels Commanders team, who's ascending in a freaking shootout, which probably could have went one of two ways in the fourth quarter as well. Then you go battle an Andy Dalton quarterback change, a lot of momentum with the Panthers that week. You still score over 30 points, and you lose. Oh, I'm sorry, you take care of it on the road. I jumped ahead. And then, of course, the epic duel yesterday, division rival, and just a game where really Joe Burrow and that offense couldn't play much better. Could not play much better. But again, most of these games that
Ravens were on the road, might we add. See, Ravens on the road going into Cincy.
And what do you do here? You're 1-4. We kind of talked. Would T. Higgins be available depending on what happens the next 3 weeks? The trade deadline's in less than 30 days now. T. Higgins looked fantastic, as he should. Jamar Chase cooked. Joe Burrow cooked the whole offense. Cooked. But the thing is, neither of these guys have contracts. They're 1-4 now. You have the Giants in the late window next week, I believe. I think that's a pretty big game in terms of what the hell are we going to do in 3 weeks if we're 1-5 and
if they're 1-5, they're not making the playoffs. Forget it. They're done.
I don't want to even say what's
in the
AFC. Loss, but as good as some of these losses were, I mean, it's just insane.
If they're 1-5 in the AFC, they don't make the playoffs because they're going to lose some more games. They're not going to win all these division games that come up. You get what I'm saying? And everybody else that keeps winning, like Baltimore, like Kansas City, maybe the Chargers, maybe the Texans, they're behind.
Chief, their four losses were by a combined 12 points. I mean,
and guess what? That's a couple years ago, the Vikings were winning, felt like every game by 1 point. But guess what that meant? They still won the game, and they got into the playoff. You get what I'm saying, Luke? It sucks for them. Joe Burrow's been hurt the past couple seasons. The receivers haven't really been signed. If they lose these receivers, Luke, they're going to get worse. Right now, they're just losing by 3 and 4. Imagine when they don't have the weapons. It's going to get ugly.
Gun to head. Will T. Higgins be a Bengal in by Thanksgiving? Will he be a Cincinnati Bengal, do you think?
Well, they franchised T. Honestly, as crazy as this sounds, I know this sounds bad. I think T's there longer than Chase. If they don't get Chase this contract, he's out. He's out. I don't unless they make a trade to get T out of there, right? Like they've got the franchise tag on him, right? T's got the franchise tag, so he wants his money. Jamar, on the other hand, wants the extension, and it hasn't materialized. I think Chase is out before T. But that's just my opinion. That's an opinion.
These aren't necessarily individual. Well, I guess, but in terms of who was cooking, I want to backtrack the two games that weren't on the main slate. But we saw an absolute shootout in Atlanta on Thursday Night Football. And Kirk Cousins.
One of the best Thursday night games we've seen in a while, outside of the ending where it just kind of started crashing and burning. But it was an exciting game up through three quarters mostly.
Kirk Cousins throwing for 5 bills was not on my bingo card. I mean, he threw the ball 58 times, but 58 times. I mean, good Lord. And Bijan continues to just plod along and maybe not be worth that first round best ball pick. And, Arthur Smith's gone and he got a real quarterback. And I know historically the Bucs have been a funnel and have been really good against the run the last couple of years, but not this year. They haven't been great against the run this year either. But either way, it was the Drake London and your guy Darnell Mooney, 16 targets, huge game.
I told everybody this was coming, right? Like Luch, we don't do this for our health. Part of this is a little bit of predictive analysis. And when you see a guy getting 7, 8, 9 targets a game and looking at the type of targets he's getting versus what he was before, Luch, you have to know that at some point the big game is coming, and it absolutely happened on a Thursday night, which I hated. I wanted that performance on like a main slate where I could get him for $4K, 4,400, and nobody's really interested, and I'm interested, and he just goes nuclear.
Yep.
But Luch, here's the other thing. Darnell Mooney could have had an even more stellar game. He dropped like a 15, 16-yarder late in the game, maybe a 20-yarder, that would have absolutely changed how this game would have ended up. And probably may not have even seen overtime. Secondarily, I do want to mention, since we're talking about the Falcons, Kyle Pitts had some form of a mini resurrection on Thursday night when, the quarterback threw for 500 yards and he got a part of his portion. Now, I know you might not think it was great, but I think he had 5 or 6 catches for 70 yards or whatever it was, somewhere around there. I mean, if he could consistently pull that off, Luke, I think we feel like our Kyle Pitts shares are more than okay.
Well, 7 for 88, 8 targets. I mean, the grand scheme of things, Kirk Cousins isn't going to be throwing the ball 60 times every game. He was third on the pecking order in targets, and still,
it should be. It was
good to see.
Clearly, London Mooney, and then at one point we thought it was Ray McLeod, and it might actually still be Ray McLeod. But if Pitts could become the third option, and there's a true third option, if London's getting 12 targets and Mooney's getting 9 and Pitts is getting 7 or 8 every game, at some point, consistency will materialize, I think, for him.
I mean, we're starting to see the answers to some of these questions we had, 2 weeks ago. Mike Evans, definitely not dead. I mean, Mike Evans balled out. Baker Mayfield, another clean game. Didn't throw for 200 yards after the hot start, but he had 3 touchdowns.
He had so many touchdowns early. Like, it was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just an absolute shootout. Both teams 3-2, and the Saints have a tough bout tonight on Monday night against Kansas City. So that division suddenly might be pretty fun and very competitive to the end, maybe.
The only non-competitive team is the stupid Panthers, which we will not talk about the Panthers on this show today. We can talk about the Bears. I forbid you to mention the stupid Panthers. Luch, I want to transition here briefly to one other team that's been cooking also. So I wanted to bring up the Commanders because I felt like there's been such a microscope on how Jaden Daniels was going to continue this season. But this one is going to be about a team. And there aren't too many left standing, Luch, but they're still there. Minnesota Vikings, 9:30 game, playing in London. versus Aaron Rodgers, 23-17, remain undefeated with Sam Darnold pulling the trigger. I mean, as much as I like the Commanders, what a story for the Vikings and Sam Darnold, who continue to be undefeated, Luke. Undefeated through 5 weeks. Look, Kevin McConnell's right now, he's my coach of the year candidate right now. Like I mean, look, I love these teams. I think Dan Quinn is in there. Don't get me wrong. Love what Dan Quinn has done here. But like, you know, it feels to me like if Coach McConnell keeps winning, he's running away with Coach of the Year, especially when everybody felt like Sam Darnold was also dust, like Deshaun Watson just a few years ago. He's had a career resurrection. In my opinion, if Sam Darnold completes this season healthy and they continue to win, he should have comeback player of the year, even though, you know, he's been in the league. He hasn't been a starter in a while. I think Sam Darnold has comeback player of the year sealed up if they continue to win. And my goodness, can Coach McConnell get coach of the year if they continue such a great season?
I would like to piggyback off that and say that in terms of people that are doing their jobs in this league in 2024, I think Brian Flores is the top of that list. I think this guy got the most unfair shake when his brief head coaching stint in Miami, and the way he's disguising these pressure coverages and rolling his safeties pre-snap. This might be the most sophisticated defensive scheme in football, and his guys are nailing it. And, you know, if you go back, even just search on Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of people that diagnose this film and, you know, saves us some time, and kudos to them. But, you know, you can go back and see the CJ Stroud game, Houston. It's like, well, what the hell happened to him? I mean, he had CJ Stroud just wamboozled, confused, and the things he was seeing pre-snap was, you know, with 20 seconds left on the play clock, was not exactly what was unfolding with 2-3 seconds left on the play clock. And these safeties are suddenly, you know, rotating. The corners are dropping back into exotic different types of coverages that, like, mega tip of the cap to Brian Flores. And I really think some of these teams might be stupid if that phone's not ringing in the offseason to try to get an interview with this guy, just doing a magnificent job. And of course, you know, the head coach deserves a lot of flowers, and there's a big time, you know, stability of culture right now on that team, and a lot of momentum and a lot of belief in Sam Darnold. You know, Justin Jefferson got paid and he's staying. But what Brian Flores is doing with that defense is awesome. When you could just make some of the best quarterbacks in the league, whether it's CJ Stroud, who was amazing and is elite guy in this league, or a guy in Aaron Rodgers, who's been doing this forever and might be a little bit too. I'm not a guy. Maybe I shouldn't even bring up Aaron Rodgers on this podcast right now. But to make him look dumb in the first half of that London game, pick six and another one, and we suddenly see a Garrett Wilson implosion of volume, 19 targets. I don't know where that came from, but if you're a Garrett Wilson fantasy owner, you got to be thrilled about that. But Brian freaking Flores, man, unbelievable job.
Can I ask you this? And I've always felt this way, but I want to get your opinion, and then I know we'll move on to our next segment here and kind of get through so we can get out of here. But why do you have to become a head coach?
You don't.
Like you get what I'm saying? Like, if I'm Brian Flores and my defense is great, and guess what? That may be his goal. But sometimes I feel like we overblow being the head coach. Like, I might seriously be like the best defensive coordinator ever. And I want to just be the best defensive coordinator. And maybe that means I get a couple championships out of this thing. But and look, I'm not trying to poo-poo on people's goals. What I'm saying, though, Luch, is let's take a page from Mr. Johnson here out in Detroit. Yeah, he had an option to become a head coach, but he chose to stay yet another year and be an offensive coordinator. Now, yeah, I think he's trying to get a Super Bowl with golf and prove that he can take an offense all the way, maybe before he takes that job. I definitely think if the Lions win a Super Bowl, Luch, Johnson is gone at that point, right? Like, at that point, what else does he have to prove? But think about guys like Wade Phillips and Soriani, like some of these guys, not Soriani, geez. The coach, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. not Stefanski. Jeez, who's the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs?
Spags.
Yeah, Spagnuolo. I'm saying all the S's, but all the wrong ones. I'm saying Stefanski and Spagnuolo. Like, he's an incredible defensive coordinator. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be a head coach. But, man, when he's just a coordinator, Luch, the defense is incredible. And that's what I'm saying. Like, do you think Flores can stomach just being the best defensive coordinator? Or do you think he wants to actually be a head coach again?
It's a great question. I would just say teams would be remiss to not at least say, hey, what are you doing? You want to come talk?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he deserves that at a minimum for sure. But you're
Absolutely.
right. And maybe he doesn't want that. I don't know. But anyway, it was a fun week. We talked Kyle Pitts. We talked a lot of Kyle Pitts last week. We talked a lot of Mark Andrews last week. And just to kind of tie this together, because we'll start looking ahead. And this is fun because we can tie in some things we saw yesterday with some matchups for this coming week. But like you mentioned, we do have that Commanders team playing Baltimore this week. And obviously there's going to be a lot of DFS interest there, probably on both sides. I mean, if last week showed us anything, the Bengals were playing some elite offense, but they're able to be scored upon, right? They're not the 08 Ravens defense. Good defense, but it's not Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, and T Swizzle coming at you.
No.
But I think in terms of a quick Mark Andrews discussion, that was a shootout, back and forth game script. He couldn't ask for more of a fair shake to see how things were going to be played out. Mark Andrews was fourth on the team in routes. He ran eight fewer routes than Isaiah Likely on just less than 50% of snaps. 5 targets, 4 catches, 55 yards. That's fine. That tells me Mark Andrews not dead. But he's kind of closer to dead than if the spectrum is from here to here. He's just an average tight end this season in this offense where Lamar went nuclear and just spread the ball out, which is awesome for real life football. That's what you want to see out of your quarterback. Zay Flowers got peppered the most, but he's been inconsistent with that kind of volume.
Practically no targets the 2 weeks prior to that. So Zay Flowers needed some sort of a game to just make some impact. And we could argue the same thing for Mark Andrews. The difference is Mark Andrews is getting a proper price adjustment. This week, I haven't looked at the pricing, Luke, because I know we like to hold off. This week, Mark Andrews should be under 4K.
Right. He was 4K flat last week.
Yeah, he was 4K flat last week.
And that's probably right.
Yeah,
that's probably right.
That's the right price. Absolutely.
So we spent a lot of time on him last week, and it was kind of cool. It wasn't cool, but good to see another week of data in a game that was back and forth with a lot of volume, and we got our answer, and that's fine. And he's really good at what he does.
If this is 3 years ago, Mark Andrews would have had 10 to 12 targets in that game.
Yeah.
Like,
you're right.
No,
absolutely right.
He definitely would have had 10 to 12 and that type of output. Because at that point, they didn't have Derrick Henry. They still probably had Gus the Bus and a hurt J.K. Dobbins. I don't even think they had Zay Flowers. This is when they probably had Aguilar and Bateman and Tylen Wallace. I don't know, but you get what I'm saying. And so we saw a game where they scored 41 points. They had 5 targets, and and it was a back and forth game. And like you said, he was 4th in the pecking order, which, as you mentioned, pretty much confirmed what we thought. He's not a high-end tight end anymore. Inversely, we're about to find out really quick whether or not Travis Kelce is going to be back to high-end now that Rashee Rice is out, and they haven't signed another high-end receiver, at least in the interim.
I just want to mention one more game because the Jaguars are on the main slate again this week, but man, I just didn't have enough of it. I briefly, mentioned last week that I was interested in these Colts if Joe Flacco started, and I had a Joe Flacco, Downs Pittman double stack with Brian Thomas on the bring back, and I min cashed that team. But man, I felt pretty good about that after the weather was scaring some people off, but that's pretty accurate. Joe Flacco gives that Colts team right now the best chance to win, and we saw the same thing last year in Cleveland when he came in after Deshaun Watson, and they were fun and made some noise. And again, depending on it hasn't been pretty for Anthony Richardson either. Will Levis is getting the social media memes, rightfully so, but maybe you're kind of in the same situation between both teams. What are your goals for Indianapolis and Tennessee? You trying to put the best product on the season right now? If so, sure. Maybe you want to play Joe Flacco. Maybe you want to play Mason Rudolph, but you're not going to find any long-term answers for your team, and you're not going to see what could develop out of either of these guys, and Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, who are physically gifted, compared to their peers at the position. I mean, Richardson is lightning fast, has a cannon. Will Levis has a cannon, super physical, made a few really dumb throws this year that we didn't see last year. So I'm really curious to see the health of Anthony Richardson this week. And those two teams are playing each other in the AFC South, which, again, with one more loss on either one of their 2024 resumes, could kind of skew the season one way or another for these two teams. So the health of Anthony Richardson is going to be interesting against the Titans that are coming off a bye week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he's not completely healthy, I think they're perfectly fine starting Flacco. I know the Jaguars won 37-34, but once again, Joe Flacco cannot play defense. And that's something else I like to look at with these quarterbacks. Like, when your quarterback gives you a chance, you got to take it. I mean, they scored 34 points. They just happen to lose by 3. It is what it is. Joe Flacco's a proven commodity around the league. Obviously, we know he's become a backup now, but he's still got, he still got it mentally and in terms of his physical attributes, in terms of spreading the ball around, he can still get the job done. Defense has got to play better if they want this Colts team to look like any form of a playoff contender.
Yeah, and that's a tough one here. I mean, if the Titans defense has been good. They've been kind of a funnel, and they've been stopping the run, and teams have been passing on them a little bit. But I think, I'm looking that I'm jumping around a little bit here. We'll go back to that Washington-Baltimore game. But, if Flacco starts, you're getting a 6,300 Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, 5,500, both Downs peppered with targets. It was Alec Pierce who caught the bomb and had a really nice fantasy score last week. So, again, I just think Joe Flacco makes these guys so much more relevant. And, if he's the guy, maybe Michael Pittman should be 7K and not 6,300. And maybe Josh Downs should be, pushing 6K and not 5,500 on DK. So that's going to be a real gauge to see, if Flacco starts, how real this Tennessee secondary is. And we'll see. Jonathan Taylor's health is another big one. I mean, Trey Sermon doesn't really move the needle. So you could see a game where, Joe Flacco's dropping back 40 times in this one as well, if they can't establish the run. And
Trey Sermon got hurt yesterday also. Yeah, he got hurt yesterday also. Man, I thought we were going to push ahead. I'm going to mention this briefly. Luke, we can take less than a minute on this. Seahawks go down yesterday to the Giants. They're 3-2 now when they were undefeated at one point. Giants are 2-3. And I think everybody thought this offense for the Giants was just going to fall off of a cliff. And lo and behold, Darius Slayton comes out here and nukes the slate. Wan'Dale still gets his volume, right? And Tyrone Tracy looked really good. I mean, 18 for 129, average of 7.2 yards per carry. How do you what's your outlook on the Seahawks here? As I think everybody expected the Seahawks to come out of this thing and be more like 4-1, and they end up losing by 9 points to the Giants.
Well, I don't doubt that there's talent in that secondary, and maybe I'm getting the same vibes, as the Titans. The Titans obviously have some talent there, but they're missing Cheeto. L'Jarius Sneed can't play both sides of the field. Tennessee played Malik Willis. They had Aaron Rodgers early, and they had Caleb Williams in his first ever career start. So those seem like positive matchups. Look at Seattle. Everyone a couple of weeks ago was like, well, you can't pass on Seattle. Context matters. They had Bo Nix in his first ever start in week 1. They had New England, who has no quarterback, in week 2. And they had the Dolphins play good defensively against the Dolphins. Don't get me wrong. A couple of weeks ago, but that was a Skylar Thompson game. So again, they had Skylar Thompson in Miami. They had a Patriots game, and they had Bo Nix. So what happens? Seattle goes into Detroit. Lions look like they're world beaters, and you know what? They're Super Bowl contenders. They're rolling on all cylinders right now. They post a 40 spot on the secondary, who many said, touted as a top 5 secondary in the league at this point, taking nothing away from Witherspoon and the other guys back there. There's certainly talent back there. What happens? Daniel Jones. And by the way, can we give our boys some flowers? I mean, he was the joke of the preseason. He had some really bad plays even earlier in the year. Goes across the country without Malik Neighbors, who was getting almost 40% of his volume. It goes in, plays a clean game, 250 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. And you're telling me the Seattle secondary is daunting? I'm not so sure. But at the same token, like, Daniel Jones go in there and get a convincing win across multiple time zones in a hostile environment. And you're right. I'm glad maybe we're spending a little more than a minute on this. But what I'm saying is I'm not exactly running away from the Seattle defense. That Giants-Bengals game is a primetime game. So that'll be a lot of fun. And I mean, Giants kind of trending right now. Bengals, pivotal game to see maybe what they do with that roster moving forward. So big ups to the Giants, man. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Sounds good to me. I think we're in look ahead now, right?
Let's do it. Let's do it. So Washington, Baltimore. Let's just continue with that one. Lead off with that one. And you have this Washington secondary who allegedly and was getting beat constantly for about a year. We talked about Deshaun Watson. I mean, Amari Cooper peppered with targets. Only 50% of them were catchable. How do you gauge this Washington secondary? Are we seeing improvements, or is it a context matters and it was a matchup thing and the Browns are really inconsistent through the air? Like, you want to play this game for fantasy purposes. How do you kind of approach it, Chief? Let me hear your thoughts.
I don't feel like we're going to know much about the secondary this week because the Ravens' two best weapons are clearly Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So if they don't find a way to stop the run this week, Luke, I'm not saying they will or won't. I'm saying if they let Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson run wild on them, then Lamar will throw for something like 170, 180, and they'll still win this game by 20 points. Like, that's really, when you look at the Ravens, when the Ravens win by 20 points or more, Luke, and I haven't looked up the statistics, so don't quote me on this. This is more of a feel statement. So listeners, if anybody checks the stats on this, I invite you to do it, and you can post it in the comments and we'll check. Speaking of that, I know Caesar Rangel mentioned he had a redraft PPR trade, and we'll get to that, Caesar, later in the show. But I feel like when the Ravens win by 15, 20 plus points, Lamar's not throwing for 300. He's throwing for 200 or less, and the running game really got rolling, and it was a full head of steam from there. And they play the time of possession game, Luke, and they run away with it, and they suffocate you. You don't have time to really get your offense in a rhythm. And by the time you look up, you're down 20 points. You got to start throwing the ball. They get opportunistic in the secondary. They get a short field. They run the ball some more. They suck up more time of possession. And you look up, and it's 30-10. And it's the fourth quarter. You don't have time to make up ground because the running game has punched you in the face early. Those are my thoughts. I don't know how true that is.
It's true. It's true. I got you.
Yeah,
Here's a gross nugget for you. I'm on fantasy points data, and Baltimore runs the 9th most man gap concept run plays in the league. The 9th most. And on those plays, they are averaging the 3rd most yards per carry. The Commanders are giving up the most yards per carry on man gap concept run plays in the NFL.
If they can't stop the run this week, they'll be down early, and they're going to look up, and it's going to be 30-10. You get what I'm saying? And then they're going to have to try to push the pedal and push the pace and get in a rhythm that they won't have because they haven't been able to get in a rhythm. So this will be an interesting week.
They might as well Travis Hunter, Jaden Daniels, and put him at cornerback at this point because he can move mountains, but he can't play on the other side of the ball. I mean, he probably could play on the other side of the ball, but bad joke on my part. But also what Travis Hunter is doing, playing both sides of the ball in college football is pretty crazy. But I mean, I'm with you. I think it's the run game, and I mean, that'll probably pick up steam throughout the week. It won't be a shock that, where people are looking at Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, but the numbers say that it could be good chalk if that's the case, depending on how Washington has defended those man gap type of runs moving forward. This is a really good one because we didn't mention Green Bay, but Arizona and Green Bay are squaring off at 1 p.m. Just feels like some points. And there's some stuff going on, obviously, with Green Bay. Christian Watson hurt. Didn't see this one coming, but Romeo Doubs was allegedly upset with his role in the offense, and the team suspended him. So I didn't see that one coming. Maybe he gets moved before the trade deadline. Here's what happened, though. Mr. Wicks just flopped. But there's a lot of context behind that. There's a lot of context behind that.
He dropped a big one late in that game. If anybody was watching the game, I mean, Luch, in terms of the NFL, that was wide open. I mean, Jordan, he put it on a rope to him, and literally, Luch, I don't know if it went right through his. I mean, he was trying to squeeze it, went right through his hands. If he caught that one, that was a big play at the end of the game that would have added to his fantasy production. I'm with you. He definitely flopped.
Well, listen to the numbers that support exactly what you saw, and thankfully, there's a lot of football psycho diehards like us in the industry who are up doing research on Mondays. But two very smart people, Jacob Gibbs, great follow on Twitter, by the way, said that the Packers had the second lowest drop back rate last week, meaning yesterday. And Wicks ended up tying with Jaden Reed for 6 targets, and he led the team with a 44% air yard share. Then Scott Barrett, who also did his research on fantasy points.
Scott Barrett. I like Scott.
Yep,
I like Scott.
Yep, he tweeted that, listen, Wicks had 19 targets the last 2 weeks. 7 of them were caught, 7 of them were uncatchable, and 5 were dropped. Wicks dropped at minimum, cost him 19 fantasy points at minimum if he had no yak on them. And he said with a perfect pair of hands that Wicks would be averaging 24.4 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks. So listen, don't jump the boat on Wicks. It seems like everything's there. Everything's there. Especially if Romeo Doubs just says, heck with the Packers. I really want to hear some more context with this Doubs situation. I can't sit here and pretend that I have a pulse on what Romeo Doubs is up to every day with the Packers beat reporting and stuff like that. But that one caught me for a surprise here. But that's certainly some important knowledge to monitor throughout the week. But his health, the health of Luke Musgrave, your boy Tucker Kraft was 3,400 on Sunday, and he had himself quite the game as well. So what's your thoughts on the Packers situation? It just feels like there might be some points in this one with the Cardinals.
Yeah, look, man, first of all, I think the Packers should be able to move the ball here, Luch. And I'm talking about this from a real life perspective. I'm going to parlay that into fantasy. So everybody just hang in there with me, please. But they should be able to move the ball because everybody's been able to move the ball on Arizona. So I think they're going to be fine. I still think I'm with you. I think Wicks and Jaden Reed are going to be fine plays. We're getting them in the 1 p.m. slot this week, Luch, like you already mentioned. Jordan Love is 6,600, and you go and look at this receiving core. Jaden Reed 7K, Wicks is only 5,200. So now the gap is getting bigger. So last week I think Jaden Reed was 6,500 and Wicks was 5K, and so we had a $1,500 gap, and now we've got an $1,800 gap, Luke, because Wicks was a lot less productive, I think, than what people anticipated. And obviously Jaden Reed was still fairly productive. I mean, four catches off 6 targets, 78 yards, and 2 rushing tips, no touchdowns. Here's something that's going to be interesting for me in terms of how they treat this thing. And I figured this was coming, Luch, but Josh Jacobs back up to almost 20 touches, 20 carries the past week. And if the Packers are able to, have some form of a stranglehold on this game early, and by stranglehold, which I'm saying it's 21-10 in the third quarter, something like that, the Josh Jacobs show might commence. I like the Packers. I like the Cardinals. I feel like I'm going to have some serious interest in Josh Jacobs this week against this Cardinals defense because I do anticipate the Packers are going to be able to score some points. And if the Cardinals can't answer, Jacobs, to me, is going to become a really intriguing roster if we think he gets another 20 carries. Because at some point, if they keep giving him 20 carries, that's 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, on the flip side, I think it's Monday, but I think that I like James Conner. You want to talk about a guy who has a borderline workhorse role, much like Josh Jacobs. I mean, he's had 16-plus carries in 4 out of 5 games that he's played this year, and you really can't ask for much more in this day and age. And he scored touchdowns in 3 of those games. He's 6,800. So I think that's interesting. And by the way, this league, man, I almost wrote off our Cardinals last week, and they go into San Fran and squeak one out. I mean, the 49ers San Fran shot themselves in the foot, quite a bit. And, Purdy had 2 picks, after a week where we were like highly praising him, and he did a lot with the little weapons. But I mean, Kittle peppered with targets, Ayuk peppered with targets. Finally, the Ayuk game in a loss. Debo played 80% of the snaps, total dud in that one. So,
but we knew that was coming. Like,
who are the Cardinals?
Ayuk just wasn't going to fall off of a cliff.
Who are the Cardinals? Who are the 49ers? How do you identify these teams on October 7th and we're 5 games through, Chief?
Look, man, I still think we believe that the 49ers are a really good football team. Ironically, I think not having Christian McCaffrey, when I say it's changed their offense, hear what I'm saying, not what I'm not saying. Like, Trey Mason's fine, right? That gets the run game going. But people fear Christian McCaffrey because of everything he can do. They get him in a slot against a linebacker. I mean, the defense is shaking in their boots. Not actually, but you get what I'm saying, Luch. When they can move him around and, move Debo around more, right? You can move Debo around more with McCaffrey there. It's just, I think it's changed their offense slightly because we have seen Purdy really air it out also, Luch, throughout these few games this season. So I still think the 49ers are a good football team. I actually still think the Cardinals are a reasonably good football team, Luch. The problem, though, is they didn't win the first week in Buffalo. If they win that week in Buffalo, they've given themselves a much better season. But they've gotten blown out, and then they've had close games with what we anticipate are really good teams. And so, maybe they win some of these games. I don't think they're going to beat the Packers this week in Lambeau, but I also didn't think they were going to beat the 49ers. And guess what happened there? They come out with a win.
Yeah, and just circling back, Wicks got virtually no price bump, so 5,200. I have no problem going back to him at all.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying earlier, Luch, where Jaden Reed is now $7K and Wicks is 5,200. I'm saying the pricing gap is even more than it was last week. Last week, it was a $1,500 pricing gap between the two. This week, it's an $1,800 pricing gap. I'm all aboard the Wicks train for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. Sorry, I'm just multitasking. You're looking at some of these games. I mean, the Nico Collins injury, right? Hamstring, was putting together a really nice game, caught a bomb before he went out. We'll see what happens throughout that week. New England, pretty good against the run, not great against the pass. And Stephon Diggs, 7,400. I mean, the guy's getting consistent volume all year. 6 targets, 12 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets. So I feel like if Collins misses, you'll see Diggs be a pretty popular play. Now, Tank Dell, who we haven't really seen have the game yet, is the guy who got the significant bump from his previous tier. He went from 5,400 against Buffalo. He's 6,200 now on DK. And I feel like that's really interesting for tournaments because he really hasn't had the game, and people will probably gravitate towards Diggs if Collins is out. But we know Dell is upside.
But the double stack just got cheaper though. That's the difference. I'm saying in terms of the Collins Diggs stat yesterday, if you were interested in it, Collins was 7,700 on DraftKings and Diggs was, I think, 68, 69. And now you're getting a double stack with Stroud for 6,200 on Dell. And I think Diggs is, oh man, I'm so sorry, folks. Diggs is what, 74? I think it is. Diggs is 7,400. Yeah. So the double stack with Stroud, if you think he's going to really, punish the Patriots, is a lot cheaper than it was last week.
Let me tell you this. According to ESPN stats and info, the Bills are the only team in the last 45 years to be tied or leading in the final minute of a game inside their own 5-yard line and throw 3 straight passes.
Oh, God.
What a sequence to end that one.
Unbelievable. Why?
So here's my quick Bills. They're not on the main slate, are they? I don't think so. No. But my quick Bills thing is you thought maybe someone would step up in terms of pass catching volume, and that just wasn't the case. I mean, what did Kincaid see? 6 targets. Curtis Samuel, I think
he saw 7 or 8. I think he saw 7 or 8.
Not bad, but not a lot of productivity. I had bigger aspirations for Curtis Samuel, and those were the 2 props I missed yesterday. Jordan Whittington was good to me. Jordan Mason was good to me.
I took the Kincaid targets prop. I got it at 5 earlier in the week before Shakir was ruled out. And then after Shakir was ruled out, I got it at 5.5, and then it bumped up to 6. So that was a good one for me last week.
Their wide receiver snap count was kind of even more spread out. Keon Coleman, 62%. He caught a bomb. Matt Collins, 54%. MVS, 46%.
Matt Collins picked up some targets early, though. He seemed to be a little bit more involved than some of the other guys. Yeah.
I just feel like on a main slate with the way this team is constructed right now, like those receivers just seem, for a single entry build, just seem like unplayable to me right now.
Yeah, I get it. Something that did mess me up, I took Cook under rushing attempts because I really thought Houston was kind of going to run away with this thing early and they were going to have to throw. And the game was just tight enough the whole way through, Luke, that Cook ends up with a lot more rushing attempts than I thought. And maybe that's to combat with the fact that Shakir is out and they don't really have, one of their weapons in the passing game, and they want to try to play a little bit more ball control.
Yeah, okay. And let's just keep moving along here. I know we don't have all the time in the world, but Philly coming off a bye week, obviously the status of their 2 stud receivers, could be a game changer on this one. And, how do you gauge the Browns defense at this point? And at the same token, the Eagles had a lot of time to prepare for this one, and I don't.
Philly better win this game, right?
They better.
Philly has to win this game. If they don't win this game, Philly Talk Radio is going to be calling for Sirianni's head, right? If they can't beat a cooked Deshaun Watson and the Browns, what are we doing?
I'm going to end up going back to Amari Cooper somewhere. He's 6K. He's just getting mega volume. Deshaun just can't get him the football. And we've seen this Eagles secondary get slaughtered. I'm going to end up playing him somewhere. How could you not?
I understand. Yeah.
How could you
not? Volume is everything. It's the same reason I play Cortland Sutton in the Denver Broncos offense. When the guy's going to get 7, 8, 9 targets a game in the 5K range, I'm playing him.
Yeah, and we just need to see the status of. They need one of those guys to play. I would hope with 2 weeks to rest up, we see at least one of Devontae Smith or AJ Brown back.
Yeah, I definitely think we see one or both of them back this week.
Yeah. Do you for DFS purposes, who would you target for tournaments, if anyone, from the Eagles side of things?
Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
Yep. Saquon Barkley. He's 8,200. Might not get as much ownership because of the price. And he's as involved as anyone in this offense.
Seems like things just obviously open up even more for him when those guys are healthy on the outside,
Yeah.
And you throw in Jalen Hurts' RPO ability to run the ball. It's hard to stack the box. It's really hard to stack the box in this situation.
Yeah. Well, Luke, let me ask you this. I've got my game of the week that I like for DFS purposes, at least early in the week. What's your first look? This is my game I want to attack early in the week for DFS purposes. This is the game. What is that game for you?
Oh man, I'm in the middle of looking up something on Devontae Smith. So give me 1 second. That'll give me a
well, I'll go ahead and talk about mine.
Okay.
And so Brian Ford talked about this yesterday, and man, it makes so much sense because this is the way I like to play. But one of the things he talked about is bad defenses are the bad defenses. I think we mentioned this last week on the show also, Luke, right? When you got bad defenses, if you keep targeting bad defenses, it's going to pay off. If you decided that you were going to target the Carolina Panthers' bad defense this week with Caleb Williams in the passing game and even DeAndre Swift, it paid off tremendous dividends. And we get a Falcons team, Luke, that we said was starting to heat up, starting to get in a rhythm, starting to get some mojo. You've been wondering, when is the Bijan game coming? Luke, you better play Bijan this week against the Carolina Panthers. He should be able to run all over this defense. He should be able to score a touchdown or 2. Kirk Cousins should be able to move the ball with ease. It is in Carolina. It is a division game. I get it, right? But once again, this Panthers defense has been nothing short of bad. We're still giving up points all over the place. I don't see how the Falcons aren't at the top of people's lists in terms of offenses to attack. They may get out to an early lead. I don't care. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to throw for 500, but my goodness, it could be 300. and Bijan could very well be a part of that. I like the Falcons' offense this week. I like the pieces of this offense. And I really, once again, Luke, I think this is a spot where they come in and they try to take care of business. And they've been progressively getting better week to week to week. Kirk Cousins, 6,200. What if I told you, do you know the price on Bijan Robinson this week, Luke? It's 6,600. That's cheaper than Josh Jacobs, cheaper than James Conner, cheaper than Gibbs, cheaper than Kamara, cheaper than Henry. My goodness, what are these prices against this bad Carolina Panthers defense? Drake London is 6,700. Let me check on my boy Mooney and see what his price is. He's 5,300. Where is Kyle Pitts? I might even play Kyle Pitts this weekend. Kyle Pitts is 4,400. Luke, this is a really cheap offense. One of my favorite teams to stack early on in the week. I am going to be on the Blitz show. I haven't looked at the Blitz. Obviously, the Blitz hasn't updated, but I'm sure there will be some other nuggets that the Blitz gives me that I will decide to attack. But if you listened to me on the Blitz show last week, I talked about the fact that that Panthers Chicago Bears game was a game that I was interested in, and we saw the dividends pay off. I'm once again going to hold true to that, Luke. Give me the Falcons against the Panthers at suppressed pricing for Bijan Robinson. I might hit the lock button on Bijan Robinson at 6,600 this week, and I know it's just Monday, but my goodness, this should be a fantastic performance for Bijan.
You make a really good point. You do. And I mean, I like the Baltimore run game. We talked about that one. We think we'd have to mention Dallas and Detroit, and I feel like they'll project well. I think a lot of pieces there will spit out to be optimally, and Sims might like them. 52.5 total. Dallas on a shorter week than usual. It's like game concluded at like 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday Night Football. But I like that game for points. I mean, it's probably a chalky take, but it's tough to pick between Montgomery and Gibbs on a full slate. They're so good together, but neither of them are cheap, and they just keep splitting production. And between the two of them, there's been 8 games, and only one time did one of them crack 20 fantasy points between the 8 games both of them have played. So they've been collectively awesome, but that doesn't really help us. Doesn't really help us for fantasy, but I'll let you follow up on that. It could be a good CD Lamb bounce back spot. I think maybe that's the play. I like CD Lamb a lot here, but I'm going to hold the line on Green Bay. At home in Lambeau early in the week, pretty nice projected team total here. Very affordable. Jordan Love 6,600. I don't know. The injuries of these wide receivers, whether Nico Collins plays, AJ Brown, if we get a Devontae Adams sighting, who knows? We'll probably
Devontae's not coming out of hiding until he's out of there.
We'll see where he goes. Where's he going?
I think Devontae's played his last snap for the Raiders. I could be wrong, right. But I mean, look, he's hurt, and I think if he's not 100%, he's going to say, nope, I'm not suiting up this week. I think he's tired of being with the Raiders. I mean, they just lost to Denver last week. I think his time there is cooked, if you will. But you were talking about Lions-Cowboys, and I do like the Lions-Cowboys game. Once again, Luch, I'm not going to target that game more than I target the Falcons. You're going to have – somebody's going to talk me off a ledge on Bijan this week, okay? Like, someone's going to have to be my friend, talk to their friendly neighborhood chief and say, Chief, don't do this. Like, you know how this goes, but I can't help it. When I look at the Lions, I feel like the Lions should be able to get off this week. Like, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, and even though after week 1 we thought that it was the Jameson Williams show, clearly it's been proven that Amon-Ra got paid all this money for a reason. Now, is that me saying don't play Jameson Williams at 5,800? No, Luch. I think Jameson Williams at 5,800 is great. He only had 2 targets in the Seattle game, but he's 2 for 80 and a touchdown. He had 3 targets in the game before that, Luch. Targets haven't been there, but he's still been able to be semi-productive. But Amon-Ra is still the engine that makes this wide receiver room go. And so he is a guy that I will absolutely have interest in this week. You talked about CD, this running game. Obviously, we finally saw Rico Dowdle sighting last week, Lucha, or in the previous night with the Steelers. 20 carries for 87 yards, 2 catches for 27 yards and a touchdown. Like we saw real volume for Rico Dowdle. So, I totally get that. My boy Yeezy's mentioning Tolbert. Obviously, Tolbert at 5K is a guy that I think in that game where we feel like they're going to have to throw the football to win. I don't think they beat the Lions straight up with like a running game. I think the Lions get out and they have to keep up with the Lions. And thus, I like him. Once again, Luchin, look, I was on the under for Dak yesterday. Dak comes out 352 yards passing against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense in Pittsburgh. So it's not like they were out in 352. Dak has not had his shortage of passing yards. He's been airing it out, even with this, patchwork receiver room alongside CeeDee Lamb, and he's going to need every bit of these passing yards, I think, to play in Jerry's world against the Lions.
Yeah, just circling back, I love your Barkley call for tournaments. Cleveland's giving up over 5 yards a pop on the ground right now.
It's a good week. We got a lot of stars back on this slate also.
And I want to continue on that Green Bay sentiment again. Jordan Love 6,600. Is Jade and Yeezy makes a good point in the chat about Tolbert. Massive game, 5K. Disappointment in the box score for Wicks. Are people going to gravitate towards Tolbert and not Wicks on Sunday? Possible. Are people going to see the 7K price tag on Jaden Reed and after just a blah whatever game be like, I don't need 7K Jaden Reed, but the guy scored 30 plus points in 2 weeks so far this season. Are those two things in the realm of possibility that people go away from Wicks, due to a pivot who just had a massive game on prime time?
I don't know, man. They're playing the Cardinals. Like, you get what I'm saying?
I do.
They're playing the Cardinals and they're at home.
But I think that Detroit-Dallas game is going to be such a monster for ownership as well. I mean, it's going to project well. It's going to be in a lot of it's going to spit out in optimizers with all the high point totals. It's going to be interesting.
That's going to be interesting because the game I'm targeting is happening at the same time. At least as of right now. I'm telling everybody right now, I'm going to be all over this Falcons offense versus the dreadful Panthers, man.
Yeah, and I mean, Chief, if backing you up, if you look at Atlanta's schedule, Kirk Cousins' first game with Atlanta off massive injury in Pittsburgh. Okay, you kind of put up a stinker, right? The Philly game, I don't know what to make of the Eagles. I don't know.
Yeah.
1 week Vic Fangio adjusts, the other they don't. Kansas City, great defense, right? New Orleans, pretty damn good defense at their own rate, which makes Monday Night Football a really, really interesting feat. And of course, then they get Tampa Bay, who I had my concerns about all year, and they throw up, 36 points. And of course, we're a little upset with the Bijan production, but I still think it's maybe the public is still a little hesitant to click those buttons, right? Especially with, like you said, some of the other great game environments on the slate: Dallas, Detroit, Baltimore, Washington, Green Bay, Arizona. Absolutely. There's some good right plays in there for sure. And I would imagine Atlanta, despite Kirk Cousins throwing for 500 yards a week ago, it's probably not on the top of everyone's radar. So I think you're onto something here, buddy.
Yeah, and I'm going to pull in another secondary NFC South matchup between the Saints and Bucks on Sunday. I also think that's a good game, Luch. Will it get overlooked? I'm not sure. But I also like that game. For one, once again, I haven't given up on the Saints. The Saints have shown they're still scoring points. If the Falcons don't come down and kick that late field goal, against the Saints win that game. So I, for one, am still invested in the Saints, especially when they're giving Alvin Kamara all of this work. Obviously, the Buccaneers have shown that they're going to score points as well, and hopefully, this division matchup between them yields some more fantasy goodness for us. Not going to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but I do plan to have pieces of that game also.
Let me one more for you. Tony Pollard, 6K, coming off a bye week. The Titans somehow squeaked out 30 points against Miami. I think that was the first 30-point game Tennessee had in 37 or 38 NFL football games. And I love Tajay Spears, don't get me wrong, but this is still a 60-40 split. The Colts have been miserable defensively, and it might be a little bit better of a game environment if Flacco's in there. So I think Tony Pollard at 6K is interesting. I mean, again, it's really hard to get excited about about the Titans right now, and obviously Calvin Ridley, like you're going to get some volatile production out of this team, but again, I mean, no one's really thinking about them off a bye week. Couldn't tell you if they're going to win. I have no confidence in this team right now, but in terms of a guy who's sub 6K and Calvin Ridley with a quarterback who has a big arm, don't always know where it's going against the Colts, who we've been picking on, right? I mean, look what Tank Bigsby did yesterday against that Colts team. I have no problem playing Tony Pollard at 6K against Indianapolis.
Yeah, for sure. I don't mind that at all.
And I guess you could talk me into a couple of Calvin Ridley darts. Maybe a Calvin Ridley, Josh Downs kind of correlation.
Good luck.
We'll see. But I do like your Atlanta calls. We'll see how the rest of the week shakes out. Story time and GPP food of the day. Is that where we're at now?
Listen, GPP food of the day. I don't know if I've talked too much GPP food of the day, but listen, folks, I don't want anybody to be trying to beat my door down. Okay, don't come to Chief's house, but my lovely wife makes some of the best homemade from scratch shrimp Alfredo you'll ever taste in your life. Oh my goodness, Luch. You know, I think I told you I needed to unplug yesterday. I told the prop shop, hey, I'm putting out a card for Sunday Night Football and I'm taking a break. I needed some hours away from sports. So I hung out with her and she made that shrimp Alfredo. She's made it before, obviously. So I don't want you guys to think this is her first time. This is not her first time stepping up to the plate. But oh my goodness, homemade shrimp Alfredo. I don't even know how she makes it. I know some of the ingredients. I don't know all the ingredients. And it's almost one of those things I don't want to know. You just keep making it. I'll keep enjoying it. I mean, chef's kiss, man. It's fantastic. For any of you that are married or not married, go get you some homemade shrimp Alfredo. Unbelievable. I mean, the sauce too, Luke. And we've got some in the fridge. I'm going to eat some probably when I get off of this show. The sauce was so rich. I mean, she makes the sauce from scratch with, I don't know, oil and butter, whatever she uses. Oh, magnifique.
I love it, man. That's awesome. By the way, I just scrolled on Twitter here. An hour ago, Adam Schefter said Nico Collins' designation went from day to day to week. So,
So probably not playing this week at all.
So there we go. Let's see what the public wants to do with Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. I mean, Stephon Diggs just seems like the cash game play. I mean, it's Monday, but he seems like the high floor, high volume guy against, outside of Gonzalez, not a great secondary, right? So, and let's be real, Houston hasn't got the ground game going since Mixon's been out, and there's no guarantee that Mixon will be back. There's no guarantee that's going to happen either. So We'll have to see. I was at the ALDS over the weekend. It was awesome. And I was born in New York, had family there, moved to PA when I was younger. Was a Knicks fan until they blacked out the games in PA. And then I started watching the Sixers. So I don't really know what's worse. But I've always been a Yankees fan, though. So it's cool to get up to the new stadium. Saw a great game, right? Didn't have to listen to Bob Costas, so that's also good, too. Can hit that mute button tonight and throw something else on during that game. But I found it, and if those who don't know, we have an office in Nashville, RotoGrinders. So there's Nashville, great city, by the way. Those of you who haven't gone, if you've been thinking about it, Nashville is a blast. I know Chief can attest to that. Also, just got to watch out for those scooters. Got to take it slow in those things, right?
Man, don't listen. Last time I went there, I had a terrible injury on a scooter going downhill.
He was okay, folks, but
it was awful. Just awful. But the brakes weren't working. I probably could have sued that company, to be honest with you, Luch. I probably could have sued them, but not going to do it. It's okay. That time has passed, but
I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, what an experience that was. So yeah, watch out for the scooters.
Back before I put you on the spot there. There's a famous alley in Nashville called Printer's Alley. And I don't normally stay around Times Square, Manhattan. I usually stay in Brooklyn, but it was super easy to catch the train to go to the Bronx. And there was a sports bar restaurant there called Printer's Alley. And online they had a Tennessee Volunteers logo and a Pittsburgh Steelers logo. So I went there for a bite. It was a cool place. Had garlic hoisin wings. They were really good. But I said to the bartender, what's the connection here between Tennessee and the Steelers? And he said, well, Printer's Alley, Tennessee Volunteers Bar. I guess we just need an NFL team to back, and we picked the Steelers. So kind of like how there's actually, I don't know if you knew this, Chief, but there's a Kansas City Chiefs bar in Philadelphia that's famous for some reason. But it was cool to see a Pittsburgh Steelers Tennessee Volunteer bar. And we got off the subway at night, kind of right when that Volunteers game was ending, and rough week for a lot of top 25 teams. And the place was packed with people decked out in Vols gear, which was cool. But you could hear a pin drop in that place after Arkansas beat them. But pretty cool stuff. So if you're ever around Times Square and you're looking for a place kind of a little off the grid, Printer's Alley, cool sports bar, especially if you're a Steelers fan or a Vols fan, and good food. So but I got a bacon, egg, and cheese, salt, pepper, ketchup producer Steve on the way out Sunday morning before I left, because they don't do them like that anywhere else. You want to pop in here? Let me hear your take on the Mets, man. 1-1 heading back to Queens. If you don't want to show face, I totally understand. But how's morale after the insane game 2 between Philly and New York?
It was such a crazy game. Can't believe it. I feel good going into New York. I think we can finish it out here.
Ooh.
But if we don't, then I get real nervous. Even if we grab one, I'm still. Then it's real sketch.
And Aaron Nola's been suspect for me all year anyway. Like they can hit Aaron Nola.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think they can. And then who else?
Would it be Ranger? Would Ranger be next Would Ranger be next up in line?
Probably. I'm surprised he didn't go yet already. Thinking about that.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here too, what is Caesar's trade in the YouTube chat? I was trying to follow what the offer he wanted.
I think he just mentioned it, and I thought maybe he was going to put. He just said it was a redraft.
And by the way, thanks for coming on, Steve.
Right now are London, Deontay, Devontae, Dell, and Lab McConkey. So London's still going strong. Deontay Johnson is going. Devontae's out. Dell is back. Dell is about to be elevated. And Lab McConkey obviously is still rolling there with the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, if that's your core receivers, I feel real good about Drake London. I feel really good this week about Tank Dell. If the Nico Collins.
And Ladd has been steady. Like, Ladd isn't going to be – I don't think Ladd's a 30-point receiver, but Ladd's like a 15-point receiver every week. You get what I'm saying, Luke? 12 to 15 every week, especially in PPR. And then Deontay, that was a weird game for the Panthers yesterday. He only had, I think, 6 or 7 targets, but he had 2 carries early. Dalton showed that he was going to get Deontay the ball early and often. Hopefully that continues, as the season rolls along. He can be stable at, the 10 to 12 target range, and that should help Deontay. The only person I'm concerned about is Devontae, because I just don't think he's going to play any more snaps for the Raiders until they make a move.
Let me ask you this before we wrap up. You have a pulse on the Panthers probably more than any of us. Is there any realm that Deontay Johnson gets moved?
Oh, Deontay Johnson, man, I thought you were going to ask this. Does Bryce Young come back? I don't think Deontay gets moved unless somebody, makes a really nice offer that we just can't refuse. I don't think he's going anywhere, at least not this season.
Okay. Cool. Good to know. We'll see what happens. If you think Dalton's in for the long haul, then Deontay.
No, I think Dalton's in for this season. Okay.
Right. That's. I'm sorry. Maybe I use that term loosely, but I know Deontay wasn't overly impressive this week. But I have no problem with him in DFS as long as Dalton's throwing the football.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
But I guess
this will be a good week to have him. As much as I like the Panthers, I talked about it, and I know we got to get in here right now. As much as I like the Panthers, Deontay is like the ultimate run back this week in DFS.
Cool. I like it, and I think it'll be kind of under-owned, but we'll see. It's only Monday. That's why you got the rest of the week to hang out here at RotoGrinders. Plenty of awesome shows. You get Grinders Live with Dean every day, a ton of good podcasts. Our Sunday morning block of shows is awesome, a lot of fun. And a big shout-out to everyone in the YouTube chat. Don, Deacon, Caesar, J3, my guy, I Got Snow Chill. Man, I love when you pop up every year a couple of times. We appreciate you. Really, you've been listening to us since the bubble too. So we appreciate y'all. The bubble meaning pandemic NBA times is kind of where the Chief Luch show got his training wheels and we started to blast off. So good times, man.
For sure.
Well, some of it was good times, but interesting times we can say navigating through that period. But my man, where can the people find you on Twitter?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ChiefJustice06. I'll be on with Blender a little bit, this week with the RotoGrinders Today show. I'll be on the Blitz show. And then I will be on not Grinders Live. I'll be on Crunch Time for NFL. And I know I missed it this week, but don't worry, I'll be back with the vengeance for Showdown, the pre-lock show for NFL this week on Sunday also.
Good stuff. Hit me up at the J Carlucci if you have any questions or if there's anything I can do for you. My DMs are open. And if you have any good food suggestions, let us hear it. That's why we're food for thought. So let's head out of here. For producer Steve and my guy Will Priester, I'm the Luch, Justin Carlucci. Thanks. Have a good week, everybody, and take care.